So as you can see on the screen, we're moving into the first key section. What is the glass ceiling? So I've got a definition there for you, which I'm not going to read aloud. But I would like some comments from you. Mm-hmm. Is this what you expected? Can you write in the chat? Is this what you understand by the term the glass ceiling?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Absolutely. Okay, good. So remember, I can't see you. You can all see me, but I can't see you.
You're lucky you can't see me.
It's a little bit strange. Okay, so let's step back into history. We're going a little bit, you know, to the past. So in 1978, if you want to know where this this whole concept came from. So in 1978, when I was still at primary school, yes, I was around. I was at primary school. Marilyn Loden, an American management consultant, she invented the phrase glass ceiling. And this was during a panel discussion about women's aspirations. She was so disappointed at what she saw there, the lack of leadership, the lack of coming forward, the lack of people, or women in particular, wanting to speak up, that she started to think about it when she went back home, I think. And she was referring to the sometimes invisible cultural barriers to success that many women come up against in their careers. Now, over the last 43 years, the glass ceiling has been expanded to include minorities, which I've put in bold there because I think it's really important. When we're talking about minorities throughout this whole discussion, we mean a group of people who, because of their physical or cultural characteristics, are singled out from others in society for unfair treatment. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking about, or that's what I mean when we're talking about minorities. I'll pause for a little bit. I do have sources and references at the end, which I can share. But I'm not going to mention every single one because I think it will take us a little bit too long. So what about the other half of the population? Well, Christine Williams introduced the term glass escalator in 1992, and that was to refer to advantages that men received in traditionally female-dominated work such as teaching, which is what we do, nursing and social work and other areas. So that included the assumption that men are better suited to leadership or management roles. So more recently, in 2018, the Department of Education School Census report shows that men are more likely to gain leadership positions 5 years sooner than women. So that's an example of a glass elevator. So as you'll see during this short webinar that we're having today, both the glass ceiling and the glass elevator can be described as tools that hold women back from leadership positions in teaching or in corporations. So a question for you before we move on. Do you think, as we've had a little voyage through history from 1978, all the way up to recent time, do you think we will still need to talk about the glass ceiling in 20 years' time? Can you put Y for yes, N for no in the chat box? And somebody let me know what you're thinking, please.
To ask the question again.
Yeah, so do you think, does the audience think that we will still need to, will it still be an issue, the glass ceiling, in 20 years?
Wow.
Just a yes or no, just a yes or no. And then we'll look at it.
Definitely, definitely yes.
Definitely yes, yeah, okay. Confident. Okay, so let's have a look at who is affected by the glass ceiling. So, which individuals? I'm sure you can guess some of them. So before I move on to the who is affected, I want to check, have you heard of this term pink collar ghetto? Are you familiar with this?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, I'd heard of pink collar, but not the
No,
ghetto part.
No.
So pink collar ghetto is referring to the feminization of poverty. And what's that all about? Well, in the early 1980s, sociologists started to use the term pink collar ghetto. So pink collar means that many women are stuck in jobs that don't pay a lot of money. That may be teaching, that may be secretarial work, office work, and so on. And ghetto in this term is used figuratively to describe this area where women are marginalized. Okay? It's often due to economic and social reasons. So the phrase, the feminization of poverty, which I really think is important, refers to the fact that in the early 80s, although there were lots more women working than before, they were still doing the same types of jobs. So they weren't venturing into new trades or industries or areas. So now we know, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Clear.
Good. Now we know what the pink collar ghetto is, but what does it mean for a teacher? So let's bring this to current times. So I did a little bit of searching around and I found some research that showed more than 4,000 educators in schools in the UK and colleges told Ofsted that this is 2 years ago, that they enjoy their work, positive, that's great. They enjoy working with their colleagues, but they feel that their profession is undervalued in society and lacks sufficient funding. Now remember, this is 4,000 respondents. They feel their workload is too high, which makes it really difficult to have a healthy work-life balance. And I think even more worryingly is that they feel that their sense of well-being is often negatively affected by senior managers, that don't communicate well, that may not give the right support or collaborate with them. So thinking about yourself, do you identify with any of their comments? Do you feel undervalued? Is there a lack of funding? Is your workload too high? What about your work-life balance? Do you identify with anything that, any of those aspects that these teachers were worried about in 2019? Do you need more time to think about it? Hi.
Are they using their chat?
I can't see the chat because I'm looking at the presentation. I can't see you at all.
Yeah, many people are answering using the chat.
Do you mind looking at the chat because you can see the presentation in the chat?
Shirley, it says, yes, minorities, unfortunately, yes, many times. Yes, indeed. So many times.
That's great. Good. So we've got some interaction. That's what I need. That's all I need. Okay, so let's talk about the important things then. So teachers are highly qualified. We know that. It's not just in the UK. I think in most countries, to become a teacher, you have to have studied a decent amount of time. In the UK, the normal route into teaching, you probably know, is to study a 3 to 4 year degree, and then you'd follow that with a postgraduate certificate in education, 5 years. So here, of course, to study law, that's also 5 years. But there's a huge difference in the status, in the pay, in the recognition that we get. So what worries me is that it's the same with trade work and also a lot of office and managers' jobs. Teachers are not really paid in terms of the paid well in terms of what they give. So some of the reasons behind that may be because of the way teaching is perceived. A lot of people see teaching as similar to care work, so similar to nursing or social work. Therefore, that may be one of the reasons why salaries are lower than you might expect. Okay, so we will have a look at that a little bit later. So let's move on. Okay, the maternal wall. I'm sure you can guess this. So have a look. So as we've just seen, sociologists in the 80s made connections about women, childcare and poverty being linked, and the lack of progress that women made, particularly during the 80s and 90s. But then in 2004, as you can see on the screen, Joan C. Williams, an American professor of law, coined this phrase, maternal wall. And she was worried that women who have been very successful may suddenly find that they reach or come up against barriers, that their proficiency becomes questioned when they become pregnant, or if they have to take maternity leave, or inquire about flexible working schedules. So in other words, mothers are sometimes assumed to not be as competent as they were before, or not as committed, and are therefore placed at a disadvantage compared to men and to fathers. So I'm sure, as you'd agree, in many countries, it's still a widely held belief that a mother's place is in the home. I'll pause there. But in the UK, a survey, which I'm pleased to say, in 2018 by the National Centre for Social Research, found that most Brits, 72%, disagreed with the view that a woman's place or a woman's job is in the home and a man's job is as the bread keeper. So I think that's really important to focus on. So for a teacher to work full-time in the UK, and I'm sure in Colombia as well, the cost of childcare provision is going to be a major consideration, as it is expensive. As a result, most female teachers with young children will need to work part-time or flexible hours, and this can be misconstrued as a lack of commitment. Okay, so it's like a vicious circle. So in more traditional workplaces, if you are faced with an unsympathetic manager, you can come up against this barrier, or you may do. A personal anecdote from me, in 2004, I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to be working as a teacher of English at a university in Colombia. And the all-female management team were wonderful. They allowed their staff to adopt flexible working hours to the extent that when I came back to the UK in 2006, I had reverse culture shock. I couldn't believe it. I found the working practices to be very inflexible, and it was hard to get used to the 9 to 5 rigid format of office work and teaching hours. So I considered myself very fortunate at that time to have experienced what it was like to work with managers that did allow me that flexibility. So what about you? Have you experienced the maternal wall? Can I have some feedback? Has anyone experienced that, or are you experiencing that now, where you have barriers to career progression?
I'm not a woman, but can I say something?
Yes, please.
Oh, when I was working at a bilingual school in Barranquilla, when I came back from the United States the first time I came back from the United States, I was the head of an English program, and there was this wonderful teacher working in kindergarten, and she got fired from that school because she got pregnant, and on top of that, she was not married. So the principal, who was another woman, said that the parents are going to say that it's not ethically correct to have a single mother teaching kids. But it is a religious school, and I'm not talking about a Catholic school. I'm talking about another religion. And she got fired for being pregnant, number one, and number two, for being a single mother. So,
I'm really glad you shared that, because that's not something that I'd thought of. But yes, it can happen, and I'm sure that it's happening all the time, and that's really worrying. But it's important to know that and to think about how to help, how to support that individual. No, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, so we're going. Sorry.
I wanted to say something. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Is it going to be short? Because, yeah, we've got quite a lot to cover. Go on,
No,
that's
don't
fine.
worry.
No,
I'll
go
next time.
No, please, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the maternal wall is not only experienced when women start working, but even before. Because if we think about the pre-employment medical tests, they always ask you about your last period. They always make you do a pregnancy test. And I think that that's discrimination, because some people don't get employed just because they're pregnant.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, of course, I'd forgotten. Yeah, in certain countries, that's the norm. It's not here. It's not allowed here in the UK. It'd be illegal. But yes, yeah, that's really important. And it was. I'm fine. Absolutely, I'm happy that you interjected there, because that was really valuable to share. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's important to know that. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're looking at the bamboo ceiling, and I think you can guess what this one is about. And if you can't, here you are. Yeah. So Yihan. Jane Yihan came up with this definition. So I'll tell you who she is. So Jane Yihan's 2006 publication, I'm trying to remember it from heart, Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling, Career Strategies for Asians. Yeah. So she was looking at how to give practical advice for Asian American professionals who are trying to go forward in their careers. And I thought what was really interesting in her findings, her observations as well, is that she points out that values that Asian American parents instill in their children were sometimes barriers to success. So what she meant by that was that parents that encourage their children to be obedient, to be passive, to be modest, and to focus more on education than experience, this can work against them sometimes in the workplace. And I'm sure that these are aspects that affect other cultures as well, not just Asians. But as it fits here, I will go ahead with that. So thinking about yourself, did your parents tell you to listen to your elders, listen to older people, respect them, follow the rules? Did they tell you that you must go to university or college? And if they did, then it does sound like there's a parallel between the bamboo ceiling and something that you might have experienced. My parents are from the Caribbean. They're Black Caribbean. And they certainly encouraged me to study, but not to the detriment of experience. So I was quite lucky that they encouraged having a balance. So education plus work experience. So that was good for me. But what does the bamboo ceiling look like in the UK? So in 1985, the Swan report, which is a long time ago, but it's still relevant, it was called Education for All, and it highlighted that BAME, which is Black, Asian and minority ethnic teachers, are underrepresented in the UK. And we're going to look at that a little bit more in the stats. So nearly 40 years later, it's still a disappointing picture. We only have 16% of BAME teachers in the profession. Repeat, 16%, 16. And even more worryingly, in terms of career progression, the picture is bleak. According to the government figures in 2019, there were around 22,000 head teachers, and over 2/3 were women, but less than 1%, in fact, it was something like 0.7% of those identified as Asian. So still lots of scope for improvement in the UK, in the teaching workforce for Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, and, you know, within that umbrella to move forward within that category. Okay. The concrete ceiling. Okay. So Jasmine Babbers in 2016, I think she was a Peace First fellow. Yes. She pointed out that for women of colour, they often face 2 layers of a glass ceiling. So what she meant by that was that women of colour can face a barrier with race, racism, or gender, sexism, which their white counterparts don't have to, or usually don't encounter. So I thought that was quite interesting. And some background on that is in 2017, in the US, Black teachers made up only 5% of the teaching workforce, while children of colour made up 50% of the US elementary and public school population. So you can see there's a real imbalance there, and we'll try and discuss later why that might be. But according to UK government data from the school teaching workforce in 2019, there were only 1% of Black Caribbean female teachers. That's my category. And 1% of Black Caribbean men. So again, this is disproportionate to the 27% of Black, Asian and minority ethnic children in schools in the UK. So it seems as if there are similar issues around recruitment, training and retention of Black female teachers in both the US and the UK context. And I'm sure that my fellow speakers will expand on that over the next coming days. So now let's have a look at the wider teaching context in the UK. So thinking about universities. So a new study by the Institute of Education, UCL, finds that 46% of all schools in England have no BAME, so that's Black, Asian and minority ethnic teachers. And even in ethnically diverse schools, BAME teachers are underrepresented in leadership roles. Only 16% of new teachers are from BAME backgrounds. And they are concentrated in the capital city, London. Furthermore, they tend to work in disadvantaged areas. So this study also highlights the hidden workload of tackling racial inequality in the workplace, and that's for BAME teachers. Okay. A recent poll by teachers' unions suggests that most BAME teachers have experienced covert racism. By covert, we're talking about micro insults, micro invalidations, and so on. So, for example, having their qualifications questioned, or being told there's an issue with their accent or dialect. So these are examples which we can look at a bit later. Okay. And just to tie up the glass ceiling, so there are other categories which unfortunately we won't have time to go through today. There's the gay glass ceiling, which is also known as a double glass ceiling, as well as a disability glass ceiling. But as we've seen so far, mainly women and minorities are affected by the glass ceiling. So you may be affected by 1 or 2 different types of glass ceilings, but let's try to think about what's behind them a little bit more. So here's a reminder for you. So the glass ceiling is an invisible barrier that prevents women and minorities from succeeding in their chosen careers. Barriers can be based on age, gender, pregnancy and maternity, race and ethnicity, and more. So more being the categories I just talked about. Sexual orientation, for example, disability, maybe even gender reassignment. But unfortunately, we don't have time to delve into all those different related terms. So while we're here, pausing for a minute, let's think about why we're still discussing the glass ceiling. I know I asked you the question, do you think this is still going to be an issue in 20 years? And some of you said, oh, yes. Now, there has been rise in employment for women and fall in employment for men for the last 40 years. And that pattern is the same in the UK and the US. I think in the US now, women hold more than 50% of American jobs. But we can't forget pay differences. This is where there's inequality, status and childcare issues, which we're going to look at a little bit more in the statistics and the numbers. Look at the picture of the gentleman here. Let's not overlook something. White heterosexual men of a certain age in some areas are labelled rather unflatteringly as pale, stale and male. That's not flattering at all, is it? But there is a growing argument that they can also be discriminated against in the workplace. So I think it's important to keep this in mind when you're recruiting, when you're training and when you're promoting, that it's equality for all. That's my message. Yes, women and minorities are mainly affected by the glass ceiling, but equality for all, I think, is my overwhelming message. It's very important that we don't forget that. Okay, how's everybody doing?
Wonderful.
Learning so much, Shirley.
Oh dear. Okay, good. I should have asked you to do the time thing for me. Right, I may summarize this a little bit. So the statistics you can see related to the glass ceiling, these are UK-based statistics, okay? And I got this information from the UK government data, which is 2018. And as I said earlier, I'm happy to share the presentation, happy to share the sources. But I'm not going to read point by point the stats. I want to go through what they mean to me. So let's go back to childcare. So I said it was expensive, but I wasn't clear about how expensive. So in the UK, parents tend to spend more than 50% of their yearly salary on childcare. So that means there's a very strong argument that mothers are likely to be working part-time, which normally has an impact on their promotion prospects. Another important point that jumps out for me from these figures are recruitment of minorities. So according to official government figures in 2018, just 13% of state-funded teachers are from Black and other minority backgrounds, compared to 27% of students. Now, an important number to focus on. This means in the UK, we need an extra 68,000 teachers from BAME backgrounds to reflect the current UK population. 68,000 teachers. So not surprisingly, it's widely reported that there are issues around positive role models for BAME students as a result of the lack of diversity in the teaching workforce. I think that's a really important point. And then progression of BAME teachers into leadership roles. Only 1% of head teachers in the UK are Black. At university level, there are also only 1% of professors, 25 female teachers employed as of 2020. A recent study in 2019 by the UK government found that nearly 60% of BAME teachers in London would remain teaching if there were improved opportunities for career progression. Sadly, at the moment, 4 out of 10 teachers leave the profession within 5 years of qualifying. Personal note from me, I teach English, as you know, at university in the UK, and last term there were 4 BAME teachers out of a total of 35. Okay, so it is a little better at university level, but there's still room for improvement. Pay and status. So teachers are still underpaid related to their social importance. So the average pay for a fully qualified primary school teacher in London last year was £30,000. That's $22,000 US. And the average salary in the UK last year was £31,000. So teachers earn just an average salary. Okay, so we definitely do it because it's a vocation. Retention of more experienced teachers is another thing that's coming out from these figures. So according to several reports, older teachers are leaving the primary school sector due to heavy workloads and the struggle to balance a healthy work-life balance. And I'd like to ask you, do you recognise any patterns or trends in this data in your context? Does any of this sound familiar? Have you all fallen asleep?
No.
Okay.
I think that, as Professor Lova was saying yesterday, it has a correlation between the amount of students from this major who are women. So we need to educate, as future teachers, we just need to educate everyone, the society, because the teaching society is mostly going to be formed by women teachers.
Yes, in the UK, there are, I think, 3/4 of the teaching population are female, and that tends to be repeated globally. Yeah, you're quite right. Thank you. So let's have a look at an educator's voice. So a head teacher, Evelyn Ford, she did an interview in the Guardian newspaper, and I really like this quote, so I wanted to share it. So we've not smashed that glass ceiling just yet. There's still inequality in all top jobs. And I work on the premise that if we don't, who will? So a really positive, inspiring message there. So let's move on to why is there a glass ceiling? As I said, I broke this down into 4 areas. So I thought it was important to look at how we think. As we've just discussed, we've got 3/4 of the school teacher population in the UK. Women are surprisingly absent from upper levels. So let's consider this first factor. So it's human nature to like and be attracted to others who share similar interests, experiences, and even appearances to us, as you can see with this picture. And that does partly explain why recruiters or individuals in power are likely to perpetuate the trend of hiring and promoting individuals that they identify most closely with. So they might be influenced by conscious biases that they are aware of. So, for example, being careful when you interviewing a candidate, you try to prevent explicit prejudice based on race, age, gender, and so on. So I mean, in the UK, we have the Equality Act 2010, which protects these 9 characteristics, as you're probably aware: age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race and religion or beliefs. But it's a lot trickier to avoid unconscious biases, right? So judgments that we make in support of one thing or person or group compared to another that is considered unfair. So an example of this might be placing somebody on a pedestal who has gone to a red brick or top level university. So you might think that they are better than they actually are just because of where they graduated from. So that's something that we need to keep that in mind as recruiters. And we also need to be aware that senior leaders from a BAME background may not be entirely supportive of people like them. They may reinforce this sort of racial status quo, preferring to see themselves as different or special. And maybe you've heard of the expression racial gatekeepers who control access to benefits such as jobs, training or promotion. And maybe even you know a few in your work context. So what I want you to take away from this is that as recruiters and managers, we need to move from culture fit to how can someone add value to the workplace through their culture. rather than trying to get them to fit to the existing culture that's there. So another point that I thought was important is, why is there a glass ceiling? So what did you want to be when you grew up?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think that there is a racial division of labor, and I think that there is a gender division of labor, you know, and in that way, people who are minorities and women are always left behind, put aside, because they want to pay them less.
Yeah, I think you make a very valid point. I read something recently in the press where somebody said, let's focus less on diversity for Black women and just pay us the same as everybody else. And that did resonate. I thought that was quite powerful. It was phrased a lot better than I'm doing it from memory. But with the gender roles, thank you, the gender roles and the cultural norms. I mean, when I was growing up, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And when I told the career officer at school, she persuaded me, I don't know how, that I should think about retail or becoming a nurse, you know, traditional female dominated work. So this is just an example of particularly in the past, how we were led to believe that certain roles were more appropriate. So gender roles, as I'm sure you're all aware, are social constructs. So they're unique to different cultures, and they're assigned normally to individuals right from the moment they're born, okay, and their sex is identified. So children are more or less segregated into a binary of either male or female genders, and then these roles are later transferred into academic interests and professional careers. So in UK culture, and I'm sure in a lot of Western cultures, girls are generally expected to be feminine and polite, whereas boys are expected to be masculine and therefore competitive and aggressive. And then you take that into the workplace, and managers and leaders are expected to display masculine traits in order to be successful. So if a woman isn't quiet and submissive and tries to step away from these gender norms, she may be called bossy or other language, which is not particularly supportive. You know, bossy is definitely not assertive. It's, you know, it's complete. It's not, it doesn't mean the same. It's not a pseudonym for assertive. It's a negative. And you have these differences in gender roles and the way that we label women's behavior in a more negative light. And that's something that I wish I had more time to talk about, but I'm conscious that I'm running out of time. But as a Black woman over the years, I've been described as a chatterbox, surprise, surprise, a know-it-all and too aggressive. But I'm sure this has been said about a lot of other BAME women. And the danger is, if we listen to naysayers, we risk losing our voice and not speaking up at all. And then this is all compounded by stereotypical views held by many people that women need to be domestic goddesses. They need to balance running a home, raising children, and somehow having a personal life of their own. So as we've seen by the data, there's still a long way to go to overturn this stereotypical view related to gender. Now, I know I've sped up a little bit, so I do apologize. There's only a couple more slides to do. So we're now looking at the third point, gender bias and stereotyping. So gender bias is really when you will see this, people have a tendency to prefer one gender over another. And this normally negatively affects women. So examples of discrimination include women doing the same job but earning less. So for example, female head teachers in the UK earn on average £6,000 less than their male counterparts. And that's across all sectors. And this gap increases with age. And then there's also women experiencing microaggressions or not receiving a promotion or getting rejected from a job because someone has a preference for a male applicant or a male manager. So another thing I wanted to add is it's widely known that men tend to apply for jobs that they may feel they're only 80% qualified to do, whereas a woman usually waits. It's a very general thing to say, but this is something I'm sure I've read somewhere. So I'm sure you may have read a job application and persuaded yourself, I'm not the right person for the job. So my message to you would be to believe in yourself, and if you have the right qualifications, then try to take the next step. Sorry, somebody was coming in there. Can I continue? Okay, so final point, why is there a glass ceiling? It's sexual harassment, status and power. Okay, so this is a huge area. I'm going to summarize it a little bit. So when I was thinking of sexual harassment here, I was thinking not just sexual harassment, but also bullying and intimidation. And I will just, rather than giving you the legal definition, which you can find for yourselves, I want to hit you with this report, which I think is really powerful. So a report by Education Week 2018 showed 25% of female educators and 6% of male educators had suffered some type of sexual assault or harassment in the workplace, while 40% have either been the victim or have witnessed such incidents. Now, the big thing is 60% of the people involved failed to report it, and they didn't report it for fear of affecting their career prospects. So this is one of the reasons why there's a glass ceiling, right? Because if you're a newly qualified teacher, for example, and you have a senior manager who may be using abusive language or acting inappropriately, it can be hard to speak up. And you can, as you've just heard, lots of people aren't doing that in the UK. Lots of teachers are not speaking up. So that's something that I would definitely urge you to do, to find a platform to do that in the right way, to follow your procedures, HR procedures, whatever they may be in place, but definitely to speak up. Okay, here's another quote that I'd like you to have a look at. So this is assistant head teacher is looking at unconscious bias. And if you get a chance, have a listen to the interview. It's really insightful. So let's recap. So 4 reasons for this glass ceiling that I've talked about at length now. So it's psychological, birds of a feather. We like people that are the same as us. That's basically it. Gender roles, you know, what we think or assume people are like. Gender bias, our preference. And sexual harassment, which expands into bullying, intimidation, and other forms of harassment. Okay. So how to break the glass ceiling. So I've put some pointers here. So these are just my suggestions that sort of map into the whole thing. So understand the glass ceiling would be the first thing.
Shirley?
Yeah.
I think you need to be starting wrapping up.
Yes, this is the last one.
All righty.
Thank you. So I'm going to give myself 3 minutes to talk very quickly. So understand the glass ceiling, engage in CPD, continuous professional development. Look at your organization. What do you notice about the HR procedures? Are they meeting their diversity targets? If not, why not? Talk about the glass ceiling. So speak up, collaborate and work with peer teachers or educators. Find a safe space where you can maybe share ideas with a friend or a mentor, and try to overcome this imposter syndrome, which lots of people have, which is, oh, well, I'm not really as good as everybody thinks I am. Yes, you are. just own it. If you're a member of a professional learning community or a teachers association, you can share best practice there and IATEFL and places like that are good places to start. Publishing is a huge one. I wish I had more time to talk about that. So yes, I'm involved in publishing, and some of the challenges that we're facing now are how to desensitize clients who may not be as inclusive as we'd like them to be. So that's an ongoing area, small steps. Conducting blind screenings, and if you're involved in recruitment, trying to conduct interviews where you have as little information as possible about the candidate at the beginning, and supporting sexual harassment survivors, mainly by encouraging them to talk and to step forward. Okay, so another quote here, so you cannot be what you cannot see. So this assistant head teacher was encouraged to set up an organisation called Mindful Equity to support BAME teachers in the UK, especially newly qualified teachers, and she's doing an amazing job. And there's my final word. Until we get equality in education, we won't have an equal society. And this is me. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry I went over by 9 minutes, but I'm blaming it on the introduction because that went over.
Thank you, Shirley. I can speak for everybody and say that we completely enjoy all the information, all your knowledge, all your experience, and it will really help us in our present, but especially our young students in the future. They are just beginning to build, okay? I wonder if there is somebody has a quick question. We have our next presenter, Professor Edith Espino. So I wonder if we have a quick question, or should we have a final question at the end?
I can come back at the end, because that way I'm not taking time from Mr.
Thank you, Shirley. But before that, I really sincerely want to give you many, many thanks for being with us and talking to our students.
Thank you for listening.
We enjoyed it. Let us have Jose present our next guest.
Thank you, Shirley. That was wonderful. Talking about these issues is very important. Some people don't want to talk about them, but talking about them that's a great beginning. And I think we need to speak and we need to act, so that we can get a more equal society in the world, not only in the UK or in the United States, but in the rest of the world as well. Let me introduce you to the next presenter, Ms. Edith Espino. She has a master's degree from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She is the director of Centro de Idiomas, Instituto Técnico Superior Especializado in Panama City. She's a wonderful, wonderful presenter. She was a wonderful student, and she's a great administrator. She's a fighter. And she's going to be talking today about retos a enfrentar como estudiante docente administrativa. And if she has the time, she can talk about the challenges that she has faced as a woman as well. So, Edith, thank you for being here.
Thank you for such a nice introduction. I am glad to see Dr. Stan McRae. He was our professor. So good to see you, Dr. McRae. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today and share my experiences from the point of view of as a student, as a teacher, and as an administrator too. And of course, if I have time, I will talk to you about the challenge of being a woman too. Can you hear me well? Yes. All right, I'm going to start my talk with a short video presentation. I hope I can do this. I'm not familiar with Google Meets. I'm used to I'm not a technological lady. I'm used to Microsoft Teams, but I think I can handle it. Let me see if I can share. If not, then I have Jose to back me up. Let me see. Let me just copy here the link. And let me see if I can copy it right here and share.
Share a tab.
Yes. Okay, hold on. Hold on a minute. I'm not sure if I'm sharing. Wait a minute. Let me go back. Present meeting details. Where do you share? Where it says present now, right?
Yes. And then you choose present, and then you choose a tab.
A tab. Got it. I got it. Yes. Here we are.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Can you see it?
Pensando en invertir, pero no tiene idea de dónde o cómo hacerlo. Yo me sentía exactamente igual. Hasta que conocí a mi experto personal en inversiones. Y el resto es historia.
The three things that I want to leave with you, just these three. I could do 10, I could do a whole life class. But just these three things will carry you if you let them. First and foremost, knowing who you are. Knowing who you are. Being able to answer this question, who am I? And what do I want? Who am I really? My answer is I am God's child. I am that which is born of all that is. I am, as Pierre de Chardin said, a spiritual being having a human experience. Come trailing the breath of the ancestors yet, but trailing the breath of the angels, and understanding that because I am connected to the source of all that is possible for me. That's who I am. And what do I want? I don't want to just be successful in the world. I don't want to just make a mark or have a legacy. The answer to that question for me is I want to fulfill the highest, truest expression of myself as a human being. I want to fulfill the promise that the Creator dreamed when he dreamed the cells that made up me. What do I want? You must have some kind of vision for your life. Even if you don't know the plan, you have to have a direction in which you choose to go.
Sorry, I don't know what happened here. I don't know what happened. Well, am I here? Hello?
Yes,
we hear you. We hear you.
No, I can't. Oh, yes. Wait. Sorry, I got an ad, so I stopped it. So anyway, I just wanted to start my talk with this this idea of that you have to have a goal, right, in your life and a vision, just like Oprah Winfrey said. I can share with you the link so that you can watch it later on, because it's really interesting, especially the part when she says that she wanted to, sometimes she had to make difficult decisions and not just think about grading in her program, but in the caring about what results will have, you know, that what impact will these things would impact on people. She would think, she talked about having a girl interview that she had two roles as a teacher in the morning, and then as you know, sort of a hooker, and also, and she said she had a boy, a 10-year-old boy, that she says it would be, you know, it would be something for the, it would do some harm to this small boy. So, you know, sometimes you have to make decisions that not just because you want to be popular or famous, but just what is right, to act and do what is right. Okay, so this was my introduction, and now I'm going to start, you know, talking about me, and a little bit about myself, my experience as a student, as a teacher, and as an administrator. Let me now share my do again here a tab. No, this is not for enter. Okay.
Share a window.
Now, when to share the PPT, shall I use window?
Yes.
A window. All right, here I go. It's so different to Teams. Sorry. Okay, compartir, but it doesn't let me. Nueva pestaña. Let me see how I do that. Doesn't let me compartir for some reason. I click on compartir and it doesn't let me.
Yeah. Do you have your PowerPoint presentation open?
Yes, I have it open.
Okay, then
I haven't, right?
Then,
I have it.
Then go to present now, and then you choose select a window. And when you select a window, you're gonna see many tabs, many little windows. It should be there somewhere.
Yes. I only see you.
You only see me.
I should have it open, right? I have it open. Okay, let me try again. I only see you, but I don't see my presentation.
Edith, I think I have your presentation and I can download it and then.
You have it, okay? Can you share it with? Yeah.
Yes.
Please do so. And I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
That's okay.
You know.
That's okay. That's okay. So it's good that I have it here.
I should have tried this before. The problem is that, as I was telling my friends, Alida and Jose, I had an issue with my dad who got sick. So, you know, things like that happen.
Yes.
So I couldn't have the chance to practice a little bit ahead of time, you know, with them as we had planned.
No worries. I'm opening it. Okay, just give me a second.
So I apologize for that.
Okay. No need to apologize. I think it's coming up.
All right.
If I do this, can you see it?
We can see it.
Not yet. Yeah, we can see your.
Good. It's good.
Yes, that's good. Yes, as Jose said, I'm going to talk about the challenges faced as a student, professor, administrative, and academic director. Okay, the next one, Jose, please. Jose, can you continue with the second one, please? The second slide.
I'm sorry, I don't think it's working like that. I mean, but maybe like this. Can you see it?
Yes.
I see well. I can see it well.
Can you see it, Edith? Can you see?
Just the first one, Jose. Yes. Can you change the next one, please?
Yeah, this is the.
Can you continue with the second one, please?
Yeah.
So let me start while Jose gets ready. First of all, I would like to talk about my challenge as a primary school student. I came from a little town, a little community, let's say 5 hours away from Panama City. So it was such a small community that my father decided to take take me to the closest town, which was about half an hour away from my little town where I grew up. So I was only 9 years old, and I was so afraid and so, because I came to a bigger school of like say 25 classrooms and a lot of students and teachers. And I remember I used to go behind the teacher. Anytime wherever the teacher went, I follow her. I was so afraid to get lost. But now I thank my dad for doing that. Why? Because once I overcame that, that fear, and that I gained a lot of things. It was difficult to be away from my parents at a short age, at 9. And on top of that, I had a car accident, a very serious car accident with the host family where I was staying with. So everything, and a lot of other challenges, going to a big school, the students, they were really different. I was a country girl coming, which it was still a town, but it was different. It was very challenging. But despite all those challenges, I graduated as an honor roll student, actually the first among my class from primary school. Remember that in the past, well, at least in our educational system, we had a primary school diploma, a junior high diploma, and a high school diploma. It's not like that anymore, but it used to be like that. So I gained independence. I became very mature at a very early age. So I think this specific event marked my life. So to fight for other goals in my life. I was really a very shy student. I also enrolled in the school band. Even though, I was so shy and so, I didn't have, I lacked self-confidence at the beginning. Of course, it was very difficult. But then I completed high school, primary school, and then I moved to junior high and high school in the same town. And being in 11th grade, I told my dad that I wanted to go abroad as an exchange student, because my passion since I was a child was to learn English. I became in love with the English language. So I told my dad to send me to abroad as an exchange student. Can you, Jose, continue with the next high school student. I went to a public high school. That was the only school in my town, so I didn't have access to private school, because in private school you have the chance to learn English. In public school, I went as an exchange student, and I couldn't say even yes. I remember I used to say yes, and I also remember saying, where are you from? And I would say Panama. I would not aspirate the P, so people would not understand Panama. So I keep telling this to my students, so that they get motivated, and they don't fall back, like Denzel Washington says in the video that I would share with you. You always fall forward. No matter what barrier you have in life, you always continue doing your best. So I had the language barrier. I tried to take, I went to enroll in the most difficult courses, biology, chemistry, history of the English language, English literature. How? If I couldn't say a word in English, it was so, now that I reflect back, I say, how could I do it? How brave I was, because that's not that easy. So I got in touch with the new culture. I got in touch. I fell in love with the American culture, with English, with the English language. I wanted to become, like Shirley was saying, she wanted, my dream was becoming a doctor, a physician. And then I fell in love with English, and I completely changed. Imagine, from being a physician to being an English teacher. So also, this was in the 80s, difficult time. Why? Because there was no WhatsApp, no WhatsApp calls, and a call was $5 from Panama to the United States. It cost $5. So my family would call me once a month for 5 minutes, and we were four children plus mom and dad. So imagine, I would talk probably less than a minute with each one of them. So that was really hard. And also I would say that the two most big challenges was not knowing the language, not knowing English, and then there was a Japanese exchange student too, and we had a hard time both. So anytime we use, like, I remember an anecdote when we went to the library, because we heard something on the foreign, and we ran into a library thinking they were calling us. Of course, they weren't calling us. It's just that we didn't know English, so we couldn't understand, or we were trying to figure out what was going on. And also having my physical education class, that was really, really challenging. Why? Because back in Panama, I used to have to work out, to play baseball, to play volleyball. That's what we used to do in our schools back here in Panama. But over there, I had to do gymnastics and things that I have never done before. And just the fact that it was completely different, but I tried my best. And I remember there was another exchange student that she quit. She says, I can't take it, I'm not going. And she didn't graduate from high school. And my accomplishments as a high school student, I became proficient in a second language. And also I got 2 high school diplomas the same year, because when I came back from the United States after being a year there, I came back home and I finished the 2 the remaining of the year, because I left in the middle of the school year in Panama. So I went and started there and came back. So that I was really proud of that, having 2 high school diplomas the same year. After, and after I tried so hard, I remember the first 2 months I got in my report card, P, and I told my host mother, why why? What does that mean? And she says, well, pass because of the effort you made. Of course, I failed in all the subjects because of my poor English. So that was difficult. That was a huge challenge to be immersed in a different culture, in a different climate. But I think, but I still have, communication with my host family. They were great. They had so much patience with me, and so I really thank them for all they did. Jose, the next slide, please, Jose. So now let me talk a little bit about my challenges and accomplishment as an undergraduate student. As an undergraduate student, I went back to my town, my town, which was 5 hours away from Panama City. So when I decided to join the English program, to major in English, there were the majority of the students were locals. They were from Panama City, except for 4 or 5 of us who came from the countryside. And of course, the majority of them spoke English, very good English, because they came from private schools. They had, in my case, well, I had the chance to go abroad, so at least I had some, some background knowledge of English, and I could speak it. I had a little bit more confidence, but my classmates, they didn't have the chance. So we got together and we made a team of the 4 or 5. There were 4 girls and a boy. And our professors were really, really tough with us. I remember they used to call us pale faces, of course, because of our skin, right? Pale faces. You're not coming here to learn English. You're not coming here to learn English. Like, actually warning us that if we didn't do well, we would not be able to continue in the program, in the English program. So some of them were really nice. I'm not saying that in general all the teachers were like that, but specifically our phonetics professor, he was really tough with us. And so we've made up this group of, and we were actually working really hard and doing our best in these courses, structural grammar and everything. And also another big challenge that I had to face was the political instability of the time with the late 80s. And so it was Noriega's regime, and there was a lot of demonstrations. I went to the University of Panama, the largest university in Panama, and over there we had a lot of demonstrations against Noriega's government. So the only 2 departments, I would say English, the English department and the medicine school were the only students who remained. Continue with the classes, even when we had a lot of shooting and everything outside the streets. I remember one time we had to stay until midnight, until things were calm, and then the university president took us out in a bus to be able to get out of the school, the university premises. It was so difficult times. A lot of tear gas, and so, but we always had. I remember one time I was in my literature Shakespeare class, and we had to go down on the floor because we could feel the shooting outside, of course, and the not real shooting, but the pellets, and the gas tear coming through the windows, and we were on the 4th floor. Imagine how hard that was. It was really, really difficult, but we did our best. And so what was my accomplishments in my undergraduate program? We graduated with honors, the 4 pale faces that our professor you know, he called us pale faces. We all graduated with honors, and we were also chosen as TAs in the English department. So we used to, you know, help the professors there because of our good grades and our performance. And it was really good, you know, to finally graduate after all the hard times we went through. And now let me talk to you about my as a professional and as a teacher. My first experience as a teacher was really tough. I found out that I was the 8th teacher for that group. Again, it was this was the school for the military students. So they, you know, since they were in power, the children thought that they could do whatever they could do in class. So I remember coming into the classroom and then students, you know, misbehaving, and I would go out and then go to the school principal and cry. And he said, "Don't cry, don't ever cry in front of the students." And I said, I won't. But it was really tough times. It was my first experience. But I feel proud that I finished. I finished with that group. Of course, I didn't want to continue working on that school. I moved to another school, but it was really difficult. Then when I moved to my other school, which was a Chinese Panamanian school, there was a very unfair salary as a non-native English teacher. There was another professor, he was American, and just because he was a native speaker, I was earning $500 a month with 38 hours of class periods, 38, and with degrees, with teaching degrees and with bachelor's degree in English. And he had only, he was only an economist. He majored in economics. And just because he spoke English, one day I was in the teacher's lounge and I was explaining to him, to one of my students, some grammar structures, and he was like this, looking at me, "Oh, Edith, where do you learn that?" I was so upset. I told him, "In college. I went to college. I majored in English." He was, you know, of course, because I can't teach Spanish. I can't, because this is my native language, and I didn't major in Spanish, even though I speak it correctly. So I imagine this was the same for him. Just because he spoke English, they hired him with a better salary, almost double. They doubled his salary just because, and it was really, really disappointing, you know, because I think it wasn't fair at all. And just so sometimes we're discriminated because we're not a native speaker, and we have more. I always tell my students that we have gone through the same experience they are going through. So sometimes it's easier for us to explain and see what they're dealing with than monolingual English teachers. So what are some of the accomplishments in my, as a professional, as a teacher? I was always trying to improve. Then, well, I always do, because I'm still, you know, trying to improve. So I decided to participate in a Central American teacher program. It was sponsored by the US government. There were only 4 spots per country, only for Central American teachers. So I decided to apply, even though I was only 1 year. I had only 1 year experience as a teacher, as an English teacher, and I had the great chance to go to Brattleboro, Vermont, the SIT, where I had as a teacher all these great book writers like Donald Freeman, Diane Larson Freeman. So I was so blessed with this great opportunity of being there for 2 months and going and see, observe classes in the United States. In Vermont, it was so cold, but I remember I went to observe a 5th grade class, and I noticed the students were having a hard time spelling words. And then I realized, wow, I am so rigid with my little kids back home, so I have to change. So that, you know, gave me a very good the reflection of what I was doing back home. I think I was too demanding for my little kids back home, and then I decided that I had to be a little bit more flexible with my students. And so after I came back, some years later, when I got more experience as a teacher, I decided to apply for a school for a Fulbright scholarship, and that was hard because here in Panama they have this scholarship for teachers, for university professors. So they only apply among the university professors. So they're like 20 or let's say 50 at the most professors. But I applied with the general program, which is we were like 300 students. Not because at that time I was working for a school, not for the university, so I couldn't apply for that specific scholarship. So it was really hard to get it. I tried the first time, I couldn't because they cut the budget. So 2 of us were left out, and they said, you are considered, but you have to go through the whole paperwork again. So it was really discouraging, but I kept trying until I finally got the scholarship where, you know, got my master at the University of Maryland. And I kept working hard. I became the youngest Panama TESOL president, the teachers of English as a foreign language, as a second language. We were very active at that time. I remember I used to go to all the different regions in Panama to organize workshops for teachers in the countryside. Even though we didn't have any resources, we did it on our own, driving our own carts and with our own resources. And I also became very active as a member of the board of directors for the Panama Fulbright Association, being a mentor for other students who wanted to, you know, to be to fulfill their dreams of becoming, you know, better professionals. And still I'm very active today. I also represented Panama with very proud of that in the PISA program for international student assessment. I think that we should aim towards this kind of teaching, you know, to test and teach students to be successful in their lives. This is a very wonderful program. You know, the way we teach. The only part that I don't like about PISA is that they do the research, they do the testing, and they don't actually follow up. They should, you know, train teachers and have them teach in science, mathematics, and reading. I was really involved in reading, and the readings were wonderful, you know, where they developed the critical thinking skills, not just mechanics. It was great, but the only complaint that I have is that they don't give a follow-up to this program in terms of, they just test the students, but they don't teach, you know, they don't have teacher training for the teachers so that they can use these resources, these wonderful resources to do this. There were only a few Latin American countries who participated. I remember Canada, the United States, Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Dominican Republic, and I think it was Argentina. There were a few countries but in total, there were 68 countries, representative of all these countries. So it was really, really challenging having to get to reach a consensus among all of us, because the tests have to be to not has to avoid cultural bias. So a lot of imagine 68 countries trying to put to agree to reach consensus on certain things. Okay, so with this each item of the test, so we had to go through all that. A lot of work, but it was really challenging. And finally, as a professional in the last government in Panama, they invested a lot in sending English teachers. I would say thousands of English teachers to the best universities in Canada, the United States, and the UK. So I had the chance to be a chaperone, take these teachers with helping them all the way through. Most of them hadn't gone abroad, so helping them through the on the plane, the customs, going through customs, then settle them down back in their universities, and then coming back home, of course, because I had work back to do at home. But it was really, really fulfilled. I felt very fulfilled, doing this for free, of course, doing this for free to help the government improve the quality of teaching for these English teachers. Some of these English teachers would not speak English well, so they went into improving their English proficiency and also their teacher training, their teaching methodology. So it was a great program. I hope that we can do this in the future. There was a lot of investment there, and I think it's paying. We can see now the teachers are doing a great job in schools. And I think that's it, right, Jose?
Yeah.
Everybody should be hungry. So let me just conclude with Denzel Washington. Jose, why don't you do it so that I don't get stuck? You have the link to the presentation, so we can put it right there.
Okay, let me open it up.
Denzel Washington's beautiful and gorgeous message. Let me wrap up by sharing with you this short video. Yeah, go ahead, present it. Yeah, please. Oh, I think I didn't share. You know what? While Jose finishes, the last chance was as a director of the second largest university, the Language Center. I had to start from scratch. The university, Universidad Tecnológica, which is the second largest university in Panama, the president called me and he said, I want you to start a language center out from scratch. And I said, me? But I'm just an English teacher. How can I do that? But I didn't tell him no. And of course, I had a lot of issues because limited space. People wanted to enroll in the classes, but we couldn't have. I didn't have enough rooms. This is an engineering school, university, so they were concerned about the academic part, not about languages, foreign languages. No, that was not really important for them. So I said no. I didn't tell him no. So it became the most prestigious and cheapest language center in the whole city. And actually, it is today. I'm no longer there. I was there for 20 years, but I was proud to be, the director of this language center. And we not only taught English, but also Spanish as a foreign language, Mandarin, Japanese, German, Portuguese. So it was a great experience too. Jose, what happened with you couldn't? Jose, are you there? Okay, let me try, because I know
okay,
time.
Edith, give me 1 second, Edith. 1 sec. Just
he's connecting.
Oh, okay. So, that's another issue that I forgot to tell you. I was after 20 years of service at this university, because of political reasons, they actually fired me, if I could say, because of political reasons. So it was really challenging. Now I'm working for another college. Okay, let's hear Denzel Washington's. I don't think that's it, Jose. Oh, yes.
I found that nothing in life is worthwhile unless you take risks. Nothing. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living." Now, I'm sure in your experiences in school and applying to college and picking your major and deciding what you want to do with life, I'm sure people have told you to make sure you have something to fall back on. Make sure you got something to fall back on, honey. But I never understood that concept, having something to fall back on. If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything. I want to fall forward. I figure at least this way I'll see what I'm going to hit. Without consistency, you'll never finish. So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances. Don't be afraid to fail. There's an old IQ test was 9 dots, and you had to draw 5 lines with a pencil within these 9 dots without lifting the pencil. The only way to do it was to go outside the box. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to fail big, to dream big. But remember, dreams without goals are just dreams. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times in his career, the most in the history of baseball. But you don't hear about the strikeouts. People remember the home runs. Fall forward. Thomas Edison conducted 1,000 failed experiments. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Because the 1,001st was the light bulb. Fall forward. Every failed experiment is one step closer to success. You've got to take risks, and I'm sure you've probably heard that before, but I want to talk to you about why that's so important. You will fail at some point in your life. Accept it. You will lose. You will embarrass yourself. You will suck at something. There's no doubt about it. And I know that's probably not a traditional message for a graduation ceremony, but hey, I'm telling you, embrace it, because it's inevitable. In the acting business, you fail all the time. Early on in my career, I auditioned for a part in a Broadway musical. Perfect role for me, I thought, except for the fact that I can't sing. I didn't get the job. But here's the thing. I didn't quit. I didn't fall back. I walked out of there to prepare for the next audition, and the next audition, and the next audition. I prayed. I prayed. And I prayed. But I continued to fail, and fail, and fail. But it didn't matter, because you know what? There's an old saying, you hang around the barbershop long enough, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. So you will catch a break, and I did catch a break. Last year, I did a play called Fences on Broadway. But here's the kicker. It was at the Court Theater. It was at the same theater that I failed that first audition 30 years prior. The point is, every graduate here today has the training and the talent to succeed. The do you have the guts to fail? If you don't fail, you're not even trying. I'll say it again. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did. So imagine you're on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts representing your unfulfilled potential. The ghost of the ideas you never acted on. The ghost of the talents you didn't use. And they're standing around your bed, angry, disappointed, and upset. They say, we came to you because you could have brought us to life, they say. And now we have to go to the grave together. So I ask you today, how many ghosts are going to be around your bed when your time comes? I just got back from South Africa. It's a beautiful country, but there are places there with terrible poverty that need help. And Africa is just the tip of the iceberg. The Middle East needs your help. Japan needs your help. Alabama needs your help. Tennessee needs your help. Louisiana needs your help. Philadelphia needs your help. The world needs a lot, and we need it from you. We really do. We need it from you young people. I mean, I'm not speaking for the rest of us up here, but I know I'm getting a little grayer. We need it from you, the young people, because remember this. You got to get out there. You got to give it everything you got, whether it's your time, your talent, your prayers, or your treasures. What are you going to do with what you have? I'm not talking about how much you have. Some of you are business majors, some of you are theologians, nurses, sociologists. Some of you have money, some of you have patience, some of you have kindness, some of you have love, some of you have the gift of long suffering. Whatever it is, whatever your gift is, what are you going to do with what you have? All right, now here's my last point about failure. Sometimes it's the best way to figure out where you're going. Your life will never be a straight path. I began at Fordham University as a pre-med student. I took a course called cardiac morphogenesis. I couldn't read it, I couldn't say it, I sure couldn't pass it. So then I decided to go into pre-law, then journalism. And with no academic focus, my grades took off in their own direction. I was a 1.8 GPA. And the university very politely suggested that it might be better to take some time off. I was 20 years old. I was at my lowest point. And then one day, and I remember the exact day, March 27th, 1975, I was helping my mother in her beauty shop. My mother owned a beauty shop up in Mount Vernon. And there was this older woman who was considered one of the elders in the town. And I didn't know her personally, but I was looking in the mirror, and every time I looked at the mirror, I could see her behind me, and she was staring at me. She just kept looking at me. Every time I looked at her, she kept giving me these strange looks. So she finally took the dryer off her head and she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Young boy, I have a prophecy, a spiritual prophecy." She said, "You are going to travel the world and speak to millions of people." And in the years that followed, just as that woman prophesied, I have traveled the world and I have spoken to millions of people through my movies. Millions who up till this day couldn't see me, who up till this day I couldn't see while I was talking to them, and they couldn't see me, they could only see the movie. They couldn't see the real me.
That's it, Jose. You can stop it there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edith.
We've been here for such a lunchtime, you know.
We enjoyed your presentation. You kind of reinforced some of the issues that Shirley was telling us about difficulties in the profession as a student, as a teacher, in both of your cases as administrators. So I think you have given us a lot to learn and to ponder about.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Jose is going to introduce our third presenter today, Dr. McRae.
So I don't know if I have my mic on. Yes, I do. So I want to thank Edith for having talked to us. Thank you, Edith. I mean, it was wonderful. Actually, I didn't know your story. I didn't know the history of your life. I've known you for a long time, but so many things you never told me, or you never told Anita or me. You know, so thank you so much. Now, let's talk about Dr. McRae. I met Dr. McRae in 1996, 1995 at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Yes, I remember that. I think I took a linguistics class with you.
Right.
If I'm not wrong, yes. And,
that's it.
The one thing I remember is that Dr. McRae was the only person that was like me, because we were minority people. There were other minority students, but not many minority people at the university, even though it's a liberal university. So it's interesting what Shirley said. She said only 1% of professors or teachers in England are minority people, but the US is a little bit like that too. And I would say that in Colombia it is about the same. So let's say a little bit about Dr. McRae. He's going to be talking about meeting the social and cultural challenges in education. He has a BA in French and Linguistics from the University of Toledo in Ohio, and an MA in French Linguistics from the University of Michigan. He has a PhD in Comparative Romance Linguistics from the University of Michigan. I want to thank you in advance, Professor, for giving us the opportunity to listen to you and to hear your about the things that you have to talk about, your wisdom and everything. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Oh, okay. Can you see? Well, I don't care if you see me. It's okay.
We can see you.
Oh my God. I was hoping you couldn't. No. I first of all, I want to thank the first two speakers for their excellent presentations, and I learned quite a bit. I feel I'm glad that you got a chance to see that that last video about failing, because now I won't feel so bad if things don't go so well, in my presentation, because Denzel has said, if you fail, you have to be prepared, to fail. So, and I know this idea of, going out, what did he say? Going outside the box, or, maybe taking risks, because I've run into that. One thing, there was a couple of things I wanted to say. When Ms. Espino gave her talk about the sometimes the prejudice against teachers of English who are not native speakers. There was an article I read just recently about that, and they said that is really an unfortunate prejudice, because like you mentioned, when you learn a language as a non-native speaker, you're more aware of the grammatical difficulties, and so therefore it's easier for you it's better in some cases, because you know what learning the rules of grammar, what that entails, as opposed to when you're a native speaker of the language, you learned it natively, and it's harder to explain to your students why you say this or why you say that. Because for me, teaching French teaching French grammar was very easy because I had to learn it as a non-native speaker. Whereas later on, I had some experience teaching English part-time as a second language. And it was much harder for me when my students asked me, oh, I don't know, why do you say I'm at school and not I'm at the school, you know? And I said, that's a good question. Next question, please. You know, I mean, I could tell them, you know, I mean, I was like, oh yeah, okay. because I never had to learn that, you know, as a non-native speaker. So that was a very good point. And what Ms. Finlater was talking about, the notion of gender roles and gender expectations. I don't know if you're aware. I was sitting at a some kind of official ceremony at Maryland one time, and of course they have the state flag of Maryland waving, and I just happened to look up at it, and I didn't realize that is anybody aware what the slogan is for Maryland state flag? I didn't realize this. It's in Italian, and it is parole femmine fatti maschi, which translates as female words, male deeds. Yeah, so you don't need to say too much more, you know. And I was sitting under that, you know, thinking, oh my God, you know, has anybody ever brought this up? Has anybody ever thought about changing it? There's been a lot of explanations, historical explanations, which I won't go into. But you know, that I think that sums up a lot of, you know, what I mean. This has been since I think the 18th century or something like that, and nobody has thought to to change that. I don't know why, but I think that says a lot. And gender expectations, ethnic expectations sometimes play into a lot of the things that we've all run into. So that's just by way of introduction. I really want to thank you for having me. I feel honored to be here. And Dr. Lobo was a wonderful student, and I'm sure that he continues to make valuable contributions to his environment. And I want to thank him for getting this together. I'm just going to add a few of my observations relative to the rigors of being a minority in the field of academia in today's world. Some of the things that happened to me and just some generalities. I think central to that discussion is the debate over the role and value of encouraging diversity in various academic settings. For some people, diversity is a bad word, because some people have made a dichotomy between diversity versus excellence. They say, well, what do we want in our program? Do you want the best program as possible that we can possibly have, or do you want a diverse program? As if the two are mutually exclusive, and it doesn't have to be that way. I found, I think it was University of Wisconsin. I think I could be wrong. They published a little pamphlet a couple years ago. Benefits. It was called "Benefits and Challenges of Diversity in Academic Setting," and they observed, and I quote, a national longitudinal study of 25,000 undergraduates at 217 four-year colleges showed that institutional policies fostering diversity had positive effects on students' cognitive development, satisfaction with the college experience, and leadership abilities. However, while according to a study by the Pew Research Center, the overall population of university undergraduate population has increased considerably in the last 2 decades, the diversity among faculty has not increased at a similar pace. And I think this was one of the points that was made earlier, that while you may have an increasingly diverse student population, hiring practices have not, have not progressed at the same rate. Although I thought it has increased, but not as fast. So obviously there's still some hesitation among administrators or whoever the powers that be in hiring minorities. Now, when I first came to UMBC, I think in my department, let me think. I think I was the only person of color or African American as an assistant professor. I think there may have been one young African American woman who was a graduate teaching assistant, but other than that, we were the only ones. So now I'm not an expert on all of the statistics and all of this, but I can say in general, we are seeing some progress in this area, but as far as faculty diversity increasing as much as student diversity, we're still lagging behind. So what I'm going to try to do is share some of my experiences, both from the standpoint of when I was a student and when I was a teacher. As you know, I'm as you have heard from some of the introductory sources, I'm a former professor. I retired officially in 2012, and then I came back until they could find a replacement for what I was doing. And they finally did, and I'm happy to say they hired a woman, so that was good, and she's great. She's much better than I ever could have been. And I was really happy with that. I taught courses in French language, French linguistics, general linguistics, and intercultural communication. I became interested in languages at an early stage in my life. And I attribute that to my older sister, Cassandra, who had taken Latin and French in high school. In the old days, it was common, a foreign language requirement was common in most high schools, and you would take 2 years of Latin and then 2 years of a modern language. At that time, that was in the 50s and 60s. And generally, these languages were French, Spanish, or German. If you were lucky enough to get into a school that had sufficient resources, you could take up to 4 years of a modern language. But the 2+2 had been sufficient for us. And we considered ourselves lucky to have gone. I grew up in, I guess, what most people would call a ghetto area. But even so, our school, I guess our school was located more of in a transitional zone. It was still a rough, it was still a tough area to grow up in. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that ghetto area so that we can have like a picture of it.
Okay. Well, actually, it became, this was in Toledo, Ohio. And it was located not too far from the downtown area. It was Toledo was sort of divided into two halves. There's a east side and the west side. East side was sort of it was an immigrant area. A lot of Hungarian and Hispanic and let me see, Italian, I think. A lot of factories. That's where my dad worked for a long time. And then the west side, across the river, which is divided by the Maumee River, the west side was more upscale, but we live like right on the sort of like the right across the river, the sort of in the downtown area, and it actually became kind of notorious in the late 60s because I don't know if you remember or have heard about the riots that took place in the late 60s in a lot of American cities. Detroit, which is only an hour away from Toledo, had a huge riot in 1967, and Toledo also had one. This riot took place not far from where I live. Later on, the Black Panther Party was becoming prominent, and the Black Panthers headquarters was located maybe 3 blocks from my house. And in September of 1970, there was a shootout between the police and the Black Panthers. As a matter of fact, the gunfire woke me up. I could hear what was going on right outside. I mean, almost like outside my window. And it was sort of a tough area, it got worse as the years went on. So bad, in fact, that especially when in the 80s and 90s, when drugs really sort of took over the area, it got so bad that my mom and my sister, who were still living in the house I was brought up in, they got afraid. They were afraid to stay there, and they moved out to Washington, D.C. They moved out or to this area, to Maryland. So that was sort of what I grew up in. But the school. What happened with me was that the schools that the first school, high school, thinking about my high school experience, it was I would say it was probably 80% African American, but it still it had even though it was in sort of a bad neighborhood, so to speak, it still had a good staff, and I really developed my interest in languages there. Unfortunately, I had to leave there in 1968 because when Martin Luther King was assassinated, there was a full-out riot at my school, and a lot of the teachers, it scared a lot of the teachers who had been there, and they left. And my parents, God bless them, I don't know how they did it, but they were afraid that, that was like into my sophomore year, and they wanted me to go to college. And they were afraid that the administrative changes at the school, staff changes, was going to hinder my ability to get into college. And so they scraped up enough money to send me to a private school to finish out my high school. So that's basically the kind of early environment I was in. But somehow, I was able to develop this interest in languages. But as you might imagine, it wasn't common for an African American male or female to be interested in these types of studies or to seek employment in these fields. We are most likely, to be associated with African American studies, African studies, similar to how many women are associated with gender studies, Latinos with Latin American studies, gays with gender identity studies. Although historically, see, this is the thing, white males have written on an immense variety of social, anthropological, racial, cultural topics encompassing a wide variety of peoples and cultures. They are not limited to, or not expected to be limited to, writing about white culture, whatever that is, or Anglo-Saxon, whatever. Okay, they can write on whatever they want to. But I was always viewed as some kind of an oddity because I I was interested in these other things. The fact that I can recite Beowulf, what way Galadin in Yale, Dagum, there, the Kuniga through me, on who the other languages, Ellen, Flemadon, people think, what's wrong with him? Somebody call a doctor, all right? What is this brother? Is he a brother from another planet? What's up with that? What is up with that? And I guess it was just part of mine. Yeah, see, even Jose is laughing at me. Oh, that's all right. That's okay. That's okay. I scared away a lot of people. That's how I escaped the ghetto. People were afraid to mess with me. They said, this guy is crazy. So, but I maintain this desire all throughout college. But back in at the University of Toledo, let me see. I had, I had no Black professors at that time. I don't know what the deal is now, but back in this would be like the early I was there from like 70 to 74. I did have one Latino professor for phonology, one of my linguistics classes, and I had one Arab American for linguistics, intro to linguistics, and I took a course in the structure of Arabic. But that was it. Everybody else, was basically white. I did have one or two female instructors, but it really wasn't a diverse department. When I went to grad school in '74 at the University of Michigan, even though I was in the Department of Romance Languages, but that was pretty much the same. There were more Latino speakers, Spanish speakers, and Latino profs because of the Spanish program. But there was only one African American professor who did become my PhD thesis advisor, and I kind of remember him to be, well, I envisioned, that when he was young, he was a nerd like me. He was in French studies, and he was just a wonderful person. But even he was dismayed at the most I don't know, the lack of African Americans in the department. And also I remember there was a chance for a candidate for, I don't know, I guess regents or something like that, an African American woman, and she was one of the top candidates, but she didn't get the job. And I've never really seen him, upset about it. He wasn't a very, he was a very quiet kind of person. And he didn't, you couldn't see where he was politically a lot of times. But I remember the day that he found out that she didn't get the position, and he just said, well, that's typical. And that's all he said. You could tell that he was, ready to, strangle somebody. But for me, the most important thing was the idea that somehow these people, they kept me motivated. I was really lucky, in that regard. And I think motivation, somehow to try to find out a way to motivate minorities in academia is really key. Based on some of the studies I've read, graduation percentages among minorities versus non-minority lag behind. Among African Americans, it's 40% versus 60%. For whites, more things that I can go into, socioeconomic and otherwise. But if somehow you can motivate students to follow, and this is one thing that Edith was talking about, to maintain a passion for something, okay, which I did have, no matter how, how strange it might seem to some people. That is the key. And make sure that a minority student is not pigeonholed into believing they can only do one type of study, one type of teaching, one type of scholarship. One time I was criticized by a guy I actually went to grad school with. He was actually a couple of years older than I was. He was a Cuban American. He asked me, I think I had just finished and I had just started teaching in the university. And you know what this guy said to me? He said, I should be more interested in working in an area where I could free my people, whatever that's supposed to mean. Yeah. In other words, you shouldn't be doing linguistics because that's not helping the Black community. He was trying to make me feel guilty for all the work that I had done to get my degree because I'm not freeing my people. And I felt like saying, well, why don't you free your people? Because he was teaching, he was not going back to Cuba or doing anything. No. He was teaching at what was historically a racist institution, but a very, very well, has a great reputation in the field. And he was teaching semiotics, which is a European-based literary theory. What is he doing to free his people? I didn't say that to him because I didn't want to start a fight or anything. I just basically ignored him. So according to him, I should be more interested in doing something Black. Okay, either that or I should work on my jump shot because these are the things that I'm expected. I'm expected to do. But see, the thing is, for me, I guess that type of attitude just made me want to do more in a field that I was not expected to do well in. And what I must say is that I think I was lucky that my professors, both undergraduate and graduate, served as sort of my unofficial mentors. In other words, they sort of took me under their wing, and maybe they saw that I was trying to, as Denzel Washington said in that piece, I was trying to fall forward. Okay, maybe I was going to fall, flat on my face, but I was going to try to do this linguistics thing. Okay. It was tough. I remember my master's exam when I was at Michigan. I didn't do the greatest on that, and I remember when I stepped out of the room, the professors, they were getting together and they were getting, they were talking about, did he pass, did he fail? And there was another professor who wasn't even involved in my exam. He just happened to be walking down the hall and he saw the people who were on my exam committee sitting, talking about my exam. And he went in there and, like, what's up, fellas, and he actually put in a good word for me. He wasn't even involved in my exam. I had him as a professor, but he was not on my exam committee. And he put in a good word for me. And so I passed, If he hadn't been walking down the hall that day, who knows what would have happened, Maybe I would have tried to perfect my jump shot, because I would have been booted out of the program. But that's really so important. if you can find a mentor, and if you wind up being, to the students who might be listening, if you can, if you succeed, try to mentor someone else. Many articles that I've read on the subject, say this very same thing, that mentorship is so important for minority students, because many times they don't have anybody else to, I was lucky. I had my sister, I had my parents who were pushing me, but many don't come from that type of background, and I could have easily, given the neighborhood I grew up in and what was happening in the 60s, I could have easily gone in another direction, but I did get a certain, even though I didn't have official mentor, like you do find in some university programs now. We've started doing that at UMBC, starting having mentors, especially for minority students. They're trying to do the same thing for women in computer science. It's really important to have someone to look up to and someone who can push you and to foster you. So I would say, from the learning perspective, my two biggest points are to try to develop and maintain a passion for something. Okay, no matter what it is, and don't let anybody discourage you. Don't let anybody say, well, you shouldn't be doing this. This is, whoever heard of music therapy? I heard somebody say that one time, the person was getting ready to major in that. And they said, well, that's stupid. Whoever heard of that, but that's what she wanted to do. And she went ahead with it. And, so maintain a passion and try to find, a mentor in someone. Okay. Now, as far as teaching goes, minorities face some of these same obstacles. My first post as an assistant professor I was at what's known as an HBCU, historically Black college university. And as such, the students were accustomed to professors from a minority group. This wasn't as I mentioned before, this wasn't the case at UMBC at the beginning of my career. At that time, I think our campus had about 20 Black professors. That was it. Of course, it was a much smaller school then too. And the student body was half the size that it is now. I don't have the exact details of who these 20 Black professors were, but probably a lot of them were in the African American Studies department. But we were a rarity, okay? I remember one time a white student passing me in the halls of my own building, joking that I might be a janitor, okay? Okay. So that's how rare, we were then. But one thing to understand was that at that time, the beginning of the 80s, Maryland University system was still trying to recover from the effects of segregation in previous decades. I interviewed for a position at the main campus at College Park, where the big University of Maryland is, a couple of years previous. And I was actually met with apologies about the status of minority employment at that campus, given its history of blatant segregation. At that time, the main campus was making a sincere effort to seek minority candidates. As it turned out, I was the linguistics choice, and a fellow alumni from Michigan was the candidate in literature, and he was also an African American. So I was really proud of that, that we had two African Americans who were being, considered for a position at the University of Maryland. But what happened there was that he decided that he wasn't being offered enough money, and there was see, the thing is that there was enough money for these two positions, but since he wanted more, they would have to take, and filling the literature position was more important at that time because they had more students. They had to take some money from their position, from my position, what would have been my position, to put into his fund. So they couldn't offer me a job. So I wound up at UMBC, which I'm very happy. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met Jose. After I spent 1 year teaching in high school in Michigan, and 1 year at Howard University was actually where I was teaching I was teaching French linguistics. One day I received a call from the main campus from College Park, where I'd interviewed 2 years earlier, and now they were offering me the job that they weren't able to fund. I was flattered, but since I had been at two other jobs for only 1 year each, I didn't want to leave UMBC after only 1 year, so I declined. I was happy at UMBC since I had such wonderful colleagues, and particularly my the senior staff, senior faculty. They again sort of served as mentors for me. They really encouraged me, and they were willing to tell me what I should or should not be doing in terms of trying to get tenure. Okay. And I can't tell you how valuable this was, because the tenure process is basically hell, okay? I think Dr. Lobo knows what I'm talking about. I mean, it's, you spend the first 6 years of being an assistant professor trying to prove yourself, okay? And so again, if you are a faculty member, a beginning faculty member, and especially if you're a minority faculty member, please try to find a mentor in those early years, okay? One of the things you have to do in upper academia is to publish and go to conferences to present your research. This is most important to make sure you are taken seriously as someone belonging to their department and not just tolerated because of quotas or affirmative action. I should note that even if you are successful in the scholarship realm, many times if you're a minority, people may assume you will be given a pass because of your ethnic background. A rather irritating thing happened to me one time when I was shopping with a colleague of mine, a white colleague, a white female colleague. She introduced me to the owner of a store at which we were shopping. She introduced me to the owner, who was white, and told him that I was a new faculty member in her department. This man smugly said to me, and he didn't know me from Adam or Eve, "Oh, you'll get tenure because you're Black." And he had just met me. He didn't know anything about me. He didn't know what I taught, and he didn't realize that at that time in the department, I had published as much as anybody else in the department. Okay, and I had excellent teaching rating. Yet he assumed that the only reason why I was going to get tenure, oh, you'll get it because you're Black. In other words, they need a Black person. Maryland has been racist, and so now they're going to try to make up for it. It doesn't matter if you're any good. Minorities in academia are often subjected to this kind of racist ignorance. One of the suggestions relative to minority success in, for instance, the medical field is that you write, publish as much as possible. This translates into the fact that you have to be active in your field. And this is really important for not just for minority candidates, but I have to emphasize the fact that sometimes we feel like we have to do a little bit more, okay? And we have to show our faces more. this puts you into the brotherhood of so-called brotherhood or sisterhood of scholarship. Maybe something you may not want to necessarily be associated with, but it's necessary to survive. Depending on your area of scholarship, you may have to put up some resistance when it comes to these conferences. And this is one thing I ran into. Sometimes, again, I was looked on as some kind of an oddity. What's he doing here? Or, how did a fellow like you get? One time I gave a talk and I had to deal with Sanskrit. And this man came up to me afterward and he said, well, how did a guy like you get interested in Sanskrit? Now, what is that supposed to mean? How did a guy like me get interested? A guy like me? What do you mean, tall guy, big guy? What you got brown eyes? What are you talking about? I knew exactly what he was referring to, but I said, well, it was just something that I was interested in. But again, this is part of what Denzel is talking about. Maybe you're afraid to go to this particular conference or that particular conference, but try to do it. I was able to publish my first articles in European journals, of which the editorial boards had no knowledge of my ethnicity, but my falling on my face moment came when I gave a paper in person at a conference where I was the only Black person, and it was a little bit outside of my field. My field was Romance linguistics, but I also did a lot of work in comparative Indo-European, and I was giving a paper at a Germanic languages conference. So I was really outside of my field. And I was the only Black person there. And I was like a piece of meat in a shark tank. My ideas were attacked with such vehemence that I wondered how my proposal for presentation had been accepted in the first place. If it was that stupid, if it was that bad, they read my proposal. Why did they have me there anyway? They should have said, no, this is garbage. I'm not going to get, no. I don't know, maybe they just wanted to get me, okay? So they did, oh God, it was terrible. It was, but I was going up for tenure and I figured, okay, I just stand here. As President Johnson said, I was like a jackass in a hailstorm. All I could do is stand there and take it. So I figured, okay, I'll just take this. Thing is that I had done the research with another friend of mine, but I had written the paper. I'd done most of the writing, but I put, after this horrible conference where they attacked me, we submitted the paper for publication and it got published. This terrible, awful thing, this obscenity, got published in a major journal. And the irony, even though both our names were on it, my name didn't get put on the. So I went through all of that. I went through all of that for nothing. But, at least I could say I went to the conference. But the point is, I was able to, withstand that. And okay, so I fell on my face there, but I got up and, I got promoted. And I guess that was the main goal. But I sort of want to close that these experiences, are all part of this whole outsider feeling that sometimes, you get, if you're a minority in academia. But you just have to withstand that, and that's why that, what you showed the video with what Denzel was saying is so important. Minorities in academia and other areas have been made to feel like they don't belong, and this is a feeling I occasionally had, even with the help of my mentor. A man named Aaron Fisher, was an assistant professor of psychology at Berkeley, published a study with these conclusions. This is specifically with STEM students, okay, people in those fields. Female and I'm quoting, female and minority graduate students published the same number of papers as their white male peers when they felt accepted by their mentors and peers and felt prepared for their graduate classes. What this tells us is that the reason why some students have lower productivity is because of their experience of being an outsider, being a minority in an environment that was designed for the majority. So to sum up, whether it's in learning or teaching or administrating in academia, realize that even though certain things are changing, some obstacles still remain for minorities. So my suggestions are, again, maintain your focus, maintain that passion that you were talking about. Maybe you got to develop a thick skin, okay? Don't allow yourself to be put in a particular academic corner because of your ethnicity. In other words, follow your passion. Allow yourself to be interested and to pursue what you want and not what somebody tells you what you should want. And if possible, try to work with a mentor. And if you succeed, be a mentor yourself. Try to use what your experiences, to help another person along. And that's pretty much it for me. And thank you very much for your patience and listening to my rant about my experiences. Thank you very much.
We didn't have to be patient, Dr. McRae. We were just fascinated listening to your wisdom and your experiences. Really, it's been a wonderful experience, a learning experience. Maintain your focus, maintain the tenacity, fall backwards, fall forward, as Edith told us, and keep fighting from Shirley. I would like to know if somebody from the audience would like to make a comment or ask a question to any one of our presenters. Even a comment, if you want to thank them personally or ask a question, or this is about your future. They have already went down that road and succeeded. Yes, Omar, he has a question.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure.
Hello.
I appreciate really your lectures and your experiences. I want to emphasize in also a community who maybe is in between here, also in Latin America, who is indigenous people. I'm not sure about what happened in the USA and what happened in the UK, but here in Latin America, most of the indigenous live also in the border, and it's difficult in the language and in the culture, and many things to access to the literacy world, to the world cities. Because they, it is really harsh to enroll in a university, or many aspects that maybe they can share. So I think literature world have studied this problem, and maybe we can learn about what writers have been doing with that problematic. That also I know it's a kind of glass ceiling also, I think, as Shirley said. So I think we have to think about also in that community, and I know here in Latin America we can be close of that problematic, and I don't know if Shirley want to talk about that, because it's also a glass ceiling maybe. So
thank you, Omar. Yes, I think you've made a very valid point. It is important to remember that we have indigenous and migrant communities and all sorts of different communities, travellers and so on within the UK, and you're making the comparison in Colombia. And I mean, here the difference is that migrants tend to be drawn towards large or heavily populated cities. For example, in Birmingham, that's our second city in the UK, and you know, it is the most diverse city, but it's really worrying in terms of stats. You know, I like my numbers, but unemployment is very high in Birmingham. So it's a tough environment for people, minorities in particular, to move forward. And as you've alluded to, of course, language is going to be a barrier here. If you're newly arrived or you're not as proficient for whatever reason, then it is harder to get a well-paying job, you know, that pays above minimum salary. But I'm going to hand over now to Dr. McRae. I'm sure he's got something valid to add as well.
And we would like to know what it is like in Panama too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just generally, indigenous cultures are still struggling in many places. My younger son is actually teaching. He's also a teacher, and he's teaching in Brazil right now. And he was saying that you know, under the current administration, the indigenous population is really, you know, pretty much ignored, and this has been a problem. Well, I mean, the sordid history of how we treated Native Americans in the United States is well documented. One thing from the linguistic standpoint, you do have a small number of linguists who are trying to revive some of these indigenous languages. I mean, that's one place to start, because you find that many of them are dying out because a lot of times only the very old speak them. They don't transmit them. They're not encouraged to transmit them to a younger generation. So a lot of these languages were dying. Some linguists are really trying to you know, to revive interest in those languages and in those cultures. But this is I know that this is a problem, you know, in places like Brazil and other places, you know, where the colonial languages, you know, are, you know, I mean, those are the ones that people are most interested in those cultures. So it continues to be a problem, but at least a few people, linguists and anthropologists, are trying to work on it. I just don't know what's going to happen. But the indigenous populations and their cultures and rights really have to be more respected and more known about them.
In Panama, we do have several indigenous communities. Unfortunately, they live far, you know, in remote areas, so they don't have the same opportunities that those people who live, you know, especially in schools. They have one teacher for, you know, how do you call those? One teacher for all the grades. Or the schools are not really in good conditions, you know. And I heard this current administration, they're going to be teaching some of the courses in their native language, which is very positive. Which is very positive. But they're coming out. You know, we have some doctors and engineers coming from indigenous areas. So we have seen, you know, some improvement lately, but still there's a lot of work that needs to be done in these communities.
Yeah, and you know, the attitudes, you know, I mean, we have to do something to improve attitudes towards indigenous cultures. I remember years ago, I was teaching a course called World Language Communities, and you know, where we talk about societies that have immigrant languages, indigenous languages, colonial languages, and how these interact or don't interact. And for a little homework assignment, we had students go to various embassies and find out, you know, get some information on languages that might be spoken in you know, let's say Mexico or Brazil or whatever. And one student showed me this, you know, I think he had gone to the Embassy of Mexico here, you know, in DC, and a couple of the items on this survey was, what other languages are spoken in your country? What other cultures are important in your country? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And whoever filled this out was angry that we were doing this. And he just put Spanish down on everything. And then at the very end, he said, why are you sending your students, why are you wasting your students' time asking these stupid questions? You know, that was his attitude. I mean, you know, in other words, the indigenous people have, I mean, they don't exist. They don't exist. And you shouldn't be teaching your students about them. That was the message, you know. So, you know, I'm sure that person is not alone. You know, I mean, there are a lot of people who have that feeling, and there are a lot of people in the United States, you know, who have that same feeling about American Indian languages, indigenous languages, and many Americans have that same feeling about Spanish spoken here in the United States. You know, even though you know, it's the biggest minority, so to speak, in the United States, and some people just, you know, they just have this prejudice against anything other than English, and it's just it's disgusting, really. I mean, it's you know, whenever I, you know, when I run into people like that, I just have to walk away. Otherwise, I may wind up arrested, because I mean, they just get on my nerves. I mean, I just can't. I guess I can't take it.
Professor.
Yes,
Professor.
sir.
To all the professors in here and to all the participants, Professor Alida and I, on behalf of the global community Uniting for Equity and the research group INGLEX and the Atlántico University, we want to thank you for attending this conference and for presenting.
Thank you for having us.
We have had a good number of people here coming to, we even had a person coming from Buenos Aires, you know, attending the, yes. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank Shirley. I know it's not early in the UK. I want to thank Edith. I know Edith has had a sick father, and Professor Stan. It's the first time I called you Stan. Professor.
That's good. Compadre.
I want to thank you very much for helping us and for talking to our people here. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think you talked about two things, and the three of you talked about issues of social class, gender, race, sexual orientations, and some other issues, you know, and some other elements, basic elements of culture. Thank you for mentioning all of them. Rarely do we see English teachers talk about these issues in their classes, because we focus on language, but they don't realize that that when you only focus on language, you're just focusing on linguistic imperialism or cultural imperialism. But we really need to be more inclusive. You know, we need to add more people to the mix. You know, people who are, all of us are different. Nobody is a dominant culture. In the future, I'm sure that things are going to change. And then the question that Shirley asked, do you think that we're going to see changes within the following 20 years? I don't know. I'm not sure. The one thing that I think is going to happen in the following 20 years, there's going to be a lot of conflict. But all of us who are people of color, who come from other countries, who are minority people, you know, we all need to fight back. And we fight back by getting a mentor, by being disciplined, by never, I mean, if we fail, we get up. By fighting back and by being together. We don't need to be fighting against each other. We don't need to fight against each other. On the contrary, we need to fight as a group. Globally, we need to get together to do something for everybody, for low-income kids, for women who are raped, for people of other orientations who are discriminated against and assaulted, you know, and for people who are just different, for people who look different, who sound different, who walk different, who do things differently. You know, I want to thank Edith, Shirley, and Professor McRae for being here, because you came all the way from wherever you are, you know, from England and from Panama and from the United States. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hola, mijita.
Don't forget about tomorrow, 1 o'clock, Dr. Ricardo and Dr. Rodriguez.
1 o'clock.
Same time, same link. Yes.
Okay.
We'll be so happy to have you back.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
Till tomorrow.
Thank you
Hasta
so
mañana.
much. Attention.
Ajá, pero no. Yo no sé por qué me está molestando.